I don't remember exactly when we bought a car down there, but obviously we needed one because 2011 Palm Drive was about 10 miles from the base, and I had a commute. I was living home, so I had a commute in the morning to work or go to school, and that classes ended around 4:30 in the afternoon, and then I had to drive home. Uh, we bought a 1938 Buick sedan that looked like a gangster's car that had running boards and a spare tire mounted on the running board. And it was black, but it was running very well. I had no trouble with it. And I think we paid somewhere around $600 or $700 for the car. Anyway, that made my transportation to work and back pretty comfortable. At first, it was Babe and Ray and me living in this house, and we, after having it fumigated, we were comfortable, and we found out about where you bought food, and a couple of little restaurants that we would go to occasionally. I remember that the name Chicken Shack came up in my head. It was a fast food chicken place, and with fried chicken, and it was quite good. That we would frequent once in a while. We found I guess it was Ray who had looked for a Jewish butcher to buy meats from, and I remember that he tried to give us what meat was hard to find in those days, and as a matter of fact, I think we had a book with meat points, coupons that you had to hand in when you bought meat. But we didn't have too much trouble with it. I don't remember, but it didn't seem to be a problem. And we did get pretty good meats. I remember the Jewish butcher had an accent, a Jewish accent, but he spoke a kind of Texas slang, so that often he would say something like, when asked, is this steak any good? He would say, I reckon it'll be okay. And it's funny how that sticks in my mind 70 years later. Anyway, we fell into kind of comfortable living there. We knew we were going to be there for 6 months, and we making the best of it. I don't know if you can realize what it was like living in Texas in 1943 without any air conditioning during the summer months. This was August by now, and it was hot and humid, and yet we managed. Didn't complain too much, just happy that we were together. Ray was recovering from the loss of a husband. but we were happy that with the war on, I was stationed here for 6 months doing interesting work, and at not being, I was in a sailor suit, but I wasn't going out to sea. This continued for 6 months. During that time, my mother and father drove down to visit. On their way to Florida, they came by a little longer trip to go to Texas, Corpus Christi, and then stayed a few weeks and then continued on to Florida. And I think that Ray went with them because she was looking to spend a few months down in Florida and in an air-conditioned hotel, which would be a little more comfortable than our building, our home in Corpus Christi. So we were left finally, just Babe and me, and kind of enjoying ourselves. We found tennis courts that were nearby, and we used to play in the late afternoon, say about 5 o'clock, and play till 6 or 6:30, and stop on the way home for a frosted drink like Coke with ice cream in it. That was before dinner, but our appetites were terrific, and that did hardly put a dent in it. So we were acclimatizing ourselves to the situation, and I guess you would say we were having a good time. We continued this comfortable living for the next 5 or 6 months till the end of this course was ended, and when it finally did end, Stanley and I heard about another 2 weeks that was added on to the 6 months if we chose to take it, and it was called MAD, which stood for Magnetic Anomaly Detection, and it was a 2-week program. And we didn't see any reason why we shouldn't take it and stay another 2 weeks. So we both signed up for that course, and added 2 weeks to our stay. It was an interesting course of itself. What it consisted of was 2 magnetometers, which in themselves detected anomalies in the magnetic field which it was surveying. And these magnetometers were placed on the wingtips of a big plane like a PBM or a PBY, and the planes would fly over areas of the ocean looking to see or feeling to see if there were any submarines lurking in the ocean waters. They were basically used on the east coast of the United States, where the submarine threat was terrible, or on the entrance to the Mediterranean, where German subs would try to sneak in to hit shipping that the Allies were sending through the Mediterranean. And there was a narrow gap, the opening to the Mediterranean and Gibraltar, which would be a natural for this kind of detection to be most useful. At any rate, Stan and I took this 2-week program, and when it was over, the chief in charge of that particular program asked me, he said that one of the instructors for that program was leaving, or I don't know, maybe being kicked out from the teaching assignment, and that he thought I would be good in that role. I seemed to have learned well the 2 weeks I was there, and asked me if I'd be interested in staying on as being an instructor in that course. Well, that was like manna from heaven. The idea that I could stay on, not go out to sea, and do something interesting, and continued living there with Babe sounded just remarkably a heaven-sent gift. So I went home, told Babe about it, and she said, of course, let's do it. So I went back, accepted the job, and now I didn't know how long this would last, but for the foreseeable future, I was staying at Ward Island, the Naval Technical Training Center in Corpus Christi. That set us to thinking a little, because Babe had left school with a year's work at the end of a third year, and that was New York University in New York City. And if I were going to stay in Corpus, it meant that she could go back and take accelerated courses in 3 months to finish up her degree work, because courses during the summer months, when the school was basically closed to regular studies, was used for these especially accelerated programs. And she got in touch with NYU and was told, yes, if she came back up, she could take the courses that she needed to get her degree in about 3 months. So we decided that she would do that instead of just hanging out with me in Corpus. And basically, she left, and I went back to living on the base and gave up the house since we didn't need it for the next few months. That was a very, very good time, and we considered ourselves very lucky. I moved back to the base and got my space instead of being in a bed in our home on 2011 Palm Street. I was stationed. I got a bed. I got a half of a double-decker bunk in a large room with a lot of other people, but I was happy for the opportunity. Living alone on the base with not much to do after classes at 4:30, I gravitated to the room. There was like a recreation room, and I found that there were a lot of card games going on, which I was interested in, especially the poker games. There were small games with stakes of a quarter and a half a dollar, going up to unlimited stakes, where bets of $500 were not unusual. I didn't go into those games because I didn't have that kind of money, but I started in the smaller games and did quite well, and gradually started increasing the size of the stake games that I sat down at. I think they were playing 5-card stud and 7-card stud, which I was familiar with, and in a short time I accumulated enough of capital so that I could sit in on the bigger games. I don't think I ever sat in on the games that were where bets were unlimited, but I did see bets of $500 just watching other people play. I probably got up to $1.02 or 5 and 10 that I felt comfortable with, and pretty soon I was making fairly steady money, and not having anything to do with the money or any place to invest it. I would go to town on weekends if I was off, and go to the largest store that sold, for men and women, and look for gifts that I could buy and send to Babe up in New York. I found some very unusual things. One was an umbrella that I think I paid $50 or $75 for, which had a peacock, some kind of bird face for its handle. It was very beautiful, and I remember sending that up, as well as many other gifts. At any rate, that's how I spent the next 3 months, waiting for Babe to finish her getting her degree or getting her courses for her degree, her courses taken that would allow her to get a bachelor's degree from NYU. Those 3 months went by pretty quickly, and before you know it, Babe was back in Corpus Christi, and I had gotten another apartment. This one was a small apartment, just a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen, but in a great location right on the bay, Corpus Christi Bay. And still no air conditioning. Nobody had air conditioning in those days. But it was clean and no bugs, and we didn't have to fumigate it. And we were both very happy to be back together. In the meantime, I had been assigned to teach some other courses besides MAD, and just for a change, it was interesting, and I learned a lot. I'm pretty sure that I taught a program called LORAN, which was long-range navigation. In other words, how do you find your way flying when you can't? If you're flying over the ocean, you can't. There are no railroad tracks to see. That was a good one. Another one was altimeters, radar altimeters, which were a new way of determining how high you were above the water or above the land. There were a half a dozen programs that I worked in and to teach, and so I was never bored with what I was doing. In the meantime, something came. The war, by the way, the war had ended with the atomic bomb being dropped on Japan, and we instructors who had enough time in to be discharged were looking to get out of the service, and we were told that we were going to be kept in for an additional few months because they didn't want to take the students going through this 11-month program in the middle of the program and tell them that they were closing it down. So the instructors would have to stay until all the students that were signed up graduated. That meant that I would have to stay in for approximately another 5 months after the time that I had enough points to be discharged, simply because they wanted to keep this radar program going. When we asked, why do we need a radar program if the war is over, we were told, we don't know, we may need to be fighting Russia before too long. So that was the excuse that was given, and we just stayed there. I was disappointed, not only for not getting out, but because there was an opportunity to go to Brazil to teach radar, the things that I was teaching to the United States Navy, to the Brazilian Navy. And because I had studied Spanish for 5 years, it would be easy for me to learn Portuguese. So they were going, the Brazilian government was going to offer a 14-week program to people like me to learn Portuguese, and then fly me and my wife to Brazil and pay me $10,000 for a year to teach the Brazilian Navy. And that looked to me like, first of all, $10,000 in those days was a pretty good salary, and the opportunity to spend a year in Brazil sounded wonderful. At age, I guess I was 22 or 23 by then, and Babe was willing, so we signed up for it. But then that was before we learned that we were going to be kept in the Navy for another 5 months, and so I couldn't accept that opportunity. And by the time I was ready to be and was discharged, that opportunity was no longer available. In the interim, Babe had finished her work at school at NYU and was eligible to receive her degree, a bachelor's degree in home economics, and came back to Corpus Christi and applied to the school system there for a job teaching. And she was offered an assignment of teaching 2 hours a week. Let's see, no, I guess it was 2 hours a day for in her field, with one class in home economics and another in teaching young men and women how to behave in going out on dates. The pay was rather small, I don't remember exactly, but it was probably only $30 a week. But anyway, she took the job, and that was in September of 1944, and she was annoyed that she had to prepare for 2 different teaching assignments and do all that work getting ready and then just have a couple of hours of work. But she didn't have any other choices, so she took the job. I remember that one of the perks of being a teacher was that you got passes to the football games. The high school football in Texas was very big. They had probably 5,000 or 6,000 people that would come to witness the high school games on Friday night. And those tickets were worth $5 each, and she got 2 tickets so that she and I could go to the game. Anyway, so there we were, both teaching. I in the Navy and Babe for the high school, Corpus Christi High, and enjoying ourselves. I mean, here we were, 22 and 23 years old, and earning a living, living in a nice place, playing tennis most afternoon. It was a pretty nice life.